Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome back to Sports Talk with Austin, your daily dose of sports and entertainment. And today on the show will be college football week 3 preview. It's hard to believe it was just week 0 not that long ago, and now it is week 3. But joining me today, special guest Jackson Johnson from the Jacksonian. We're trying something new out here. Gonna have some guests coming along to preview and pick hopefully throughout the year. But Jackson, how are you doing? And how are you feeling after last week? It was a tough week for
Um,
Alabama.
well, I'm doing pretty good, but Bama gave up 10 penalties, and that's what's going to kill you are penalties in the game. I mean, they looked undisciplined against Texas, and 2021 they were undisciplined, 99th in penalties per game. 2022 they were 129th in penalties per game. And this year, it's looking like the same. Losing Scott Cochran has been a bad thing for the Alabama Crimson Tide, but it's been great for Georgia because they now have them. Those 2 national titles show.
Yeah, it definitely does, Jackson. But hopefully Bama can turn around this week. I mean, they're playing South Florida. If you struggle with them, Nick Saban may want to reassess this team he built. But
Well, this is
but
in
team
2007 South Florida for sure.
But speaking of teams that are struggling and kind of getting hot at hopefully the right time, our first game of the week, Virginia at Maryland. You've got the Virginia Cavaliers coming of a off of a loss to Tennessee. We kind of expected that. I don't Jackson, did you think Virginia could pull off an upset against Tennessee?
No.
And then they lose to James Madison. That was bad. But
Well,
maybe they can get. Go ahead.
well, Virginia was so bad that James Madison was favored against them.
Oh boy, yeah, that's never good. But then you look at the flip side of it. You got Maryland. You know, last week they played Charlotte. They struggled a bit, in that game, but they were able to get it together. Is Maryland going to be maybe a dark horse in the Big Ten? Is Tua Tagovailoa, Tua's younger brother, or Tulia, how you pronounce that? Is he a dark horse? Maybe Heisman candidate? You know, maybe he could pull off a stutter here and there. But as for this game, Virginia, they're 0-2 heading into College Park. I just think Maryland is going to have too much offense. I think Tony Elliott's got some work to do there. And I think Maryland's going to get this done somewhere in the range of like 42-17. It's not going to be close. I think Virginia's just too outmatched. I wish Virginia was in a better state like they were in 2019, 2020, and 21. But, things have kind of gone downhill for them. But I think Maryland, if they want to beat the better teams in the Big Ten, they obviously got to win these non-con games. And I think Maryland gets it done. What say you, Jackson? Who do you got winning this game? And what's your take on these teams?
I got Maryland winning 42-17 against Virginia. Right now, I don't think things are going to get better for Virginia. But for Maryland, life's going to be pretty easy for them for the rest of September as they got Michigan State and Indiana afterwards. But this
Yeah,
game used to be an old rivalry in the ACC before Maryland left for the Big Ten. So that was a pretty fun game. And I'm glad that
yeah,
this game
and
I'm glad that this
oh, go
game is
ahead.
back. I'm glad that this game is back for a little bit.
I am too, even though I don't expect it to be close. I think Maryland should run away with this game, but you never know. Now, speaking of a game that could draw some attention, you've got the Army Knights against at the UTSA Roadrunners. Now, this, a lot of people are going to sleep on this game. Well, I think this game could be one of the closest of the weekend. Because Army has been known to pull some surprisers. Everyone remembers Oklahoma. That was one of the big ones. Everyone's thinking, oh, Oklahoma's offense is going to be too much for Army. And they ended up taking them to overtime and barely beating them. UTSA, they're coming off a fantastic season last year, but they lost a lot of talent, and they're kind of rebuilding. They lost a heartbreaker to Houston opening week, but they kind of got the bounce back wing going. And I think this game here, if this was at Army, I would consider picking the Knights, but I think UTSA at home is just going to be a little too much. And I think that UTSA is going to get a hard-fought win. I see them winning this game 27-17. I think they win by 10 and get it done at home. Jackson, what is your take on this game, and who are you going with?
I'm going to go with the upset and go with Army in a 24-21 victory.
Okay. Little sneaky upset suspicion. Explain your reasoning. What do you think will help Army get that upset?
Well, UTSA is going to be thinking a little more about Tennessee. They're not going to be thinking too much about Army. So Army's a little bit of a trap game, even though it's a home game for UTSA.
Yeah, that's a good point. Now, I'm glad this is a good transition. Speaking of trap games, are we looking at the biggest trap game of the weekend? Number 3, Florida State goes at BC Boston College. Is Florida State playing a little look-see to Clemson? No, that's too much. Jordan Travis, the way Boston College is, I mean, for crying out loud, they almost lost to Holy Cross, Jackson. Who does that? And they lost to Northern Iowa?
Illinois.
If Florida State can't beat Boston College, maybe they have more problems than we thought they would. But
ACC.
Florida State.
ACC.
The ACC. Yeah, that's what the ACC does, Jackson. They spoil games and lose games that they shouldn't. But will Boston College lose this one? I mean, win this one possibly? No. Florida State's going to run them off the field. It's going to be ugly. Hide your children. Or better yet, just don't even turn on the channel. Go watch something else for a bit. Because Florida State's going to have their way in this game. I don't think there's no look-sees ahead. I think Jordan Travis, he's going to have a nice first half, and then in the second half, he's going to get to take a nice rest and get ready for Clemson. But Jackson, do you see any potential look ahead and maybe an upset, or is Florida State going to kick some butt?
Maybe in like the first quarter, but that's about it, really. I think Keon Coleman is going to pad his stats against Boston College as it's a 45-17 victory for Florida State.
Yeah, I'm in the ballpark of like a 52-7, and that's being nice. Florida State could skunk them and shut them out altogether. But a game that always brings some interest, Jackson, and what a thriller it was last year. Number 7 Pitt State goes at Illinois at noon on Fox. Now this is very interesting. Illinois is coming off that butt kicking that they took Friday night against Kansas. Penn State, up to this point, their biggest game they played is West Virginia, which we can't even really call West Virginia a big game anymore because they're a disaster. Neil Brown, if he doesn't win against Pittsburgh, which we'll get to, he's likely gone. But that's not the point at hand at the moment. Penn State, Illinois, this is going to be a very interesting matchup. I think it's going to come down to a lot to the defenses in this game because both have really great defenses. And I think one big reason is that Penn State, obviously we know how explosive their offense can be. We also know how explosive their defense can be. But Illinois, their defense can create some turnovers, force some havoc, but against running quarterbacks they struggle. Drew Aller, he's more of let's stay in the pocket, and then if we have to go, we go. I think in this game here, I think Penn State's going to win, but look for it to be a 23-20 type game. I think Penn State wins by a field goal. It's not a game that's going to impress you when it comes to the scoring column or the stat sheet, but Penn State wins because they have too much at risk, and I think they need this a little bit more considering Michigan, Ohio State won't be too far behind in terms of where they sit on the schedule. But this is going to be a really competitive game. If this was in Penn State, I would consider maybe picking Penn State by 2 or 3 scores. But since this is at Illinois, I think this will be a field goal type game. What are your thoughts on this game, Jackson?
Well, I think it's going to look close in the first, second, and third quarter, but Drew Allard is going to pad the stats in the fourth quarter. He's going to smack around that Illinois defense. And it's going to be
So you're picking
38 to 21.
Oh, go ahead.
38-21
Okay.
Penn State. But I will say, though,
Okay.
those Nittany Lions are pissed about 2021. They are not forgetting that 9 overtime loss. They are not forgetting that. They're going to make Illinois.
I think the thing about it is, Jackson, I think they've had this game circled before the scheduling came out. I think they looked at this on the calendar and said, oh, yes, we're going to Illinois week 3 of the season. We want to kick their butts back. So, yeah, I think they've had this circled a while. Now, will they get the win?
Where's Illinois?
Yeah. Well, I know it's an old cliche, but like not to get too far off topic, but for like Alabama, obviously when you all play Tennessee, LSU, and Auburn, you look at that game first thing on the schedule. I'm sure Penn State, besides looking at Michigan, Ohio State, I'm sure Illinois is a game where they're like, where are they at on our schedule? Because we want to beat them just because of how much heck they give us.
Oh, yeah.
But you want to speak of a team that's got possibly heck to pay. Number 14, LSU at Mississippi State. Is Brian Kelly going to lose 2 games already? Are Mississippi State better than we thought? Well, I mean, LSU, they're already behind the 8 ball because they got trounced opening weekend against Florida State, which I did not see coming personally. I thought it'd be the opposite way around. I figured LSU would do the trouncing, but Florida State may turn out to be better than we all thought, or most thought. Mississippi State, they're in a unique scenario. Obviously what they went through last year, losing Mike Leach, rest in peace to him, God bless his soul, he's going to be missed. But now they got a new head coach, a new scheme, they got it all going on. But Will Rogers came back. And now LSU, they're going up to the cowbell. They're going up to Mississippi State, the Hail State, where things get a little tricky for teams. And LSU already having that 1 loss, you would like to think that they wouldn't suffer any more losses until they got to, Alabama. But this is trap game scenario. I think Will Rogers is going to make a lot of big plays. But I think LSU with too much talent, I think Jaden Daniels, I think he's gonna prove that his status of being one of the best quarterbacks in the SEC. And I think LSU, at least for the first 3 quarters, are gonna have a struggle, but defense gets like a late takeaway, and then they roll the rest of the way. I got LSU 37, Mississippi State 21. What about you, Jackson? Is there any upset potential here, or has BK got this under control?
I don't think it's going to be a beautiful day in the neighborhood for Mr. Rogers. As for Brian Kelly, he'll be having his way with a 35-24 victory.
Yeah. because you just look at it and say the talent gap is significant between the two. And that's crazy to think because they are both in the SEC. But LSU, they get a lot of the 5 stars, and Mississippi State gets the 3 and 4s. And if they get a 5 star, that's a huge win on their season. But yes, I agree. I think Mississippi State, this is where the momentum comes down. And I think LSU realizes that they can't lose another game, or else it's kaput for them. And they can't start off SEC play bad either. So I agree, LSU. Now, speaking of games that could be very interesting, number 15 Kansas State at Missouri. Now, I will be honest with you, and me and Jackson, we did an SEC preview. We were not high on Missouri, but after seeing them play a little bit, they could be better than we both think. And obviously, Kansas State lost a lot of talent, but Will Howard is still there, righting the ship. But Deuce Vaughn is no longer there, and Kansas State is traveling to Missouri. Is this trap game? Yes, because Missouri has the potential, like they did to Georgia last year, and catch them napping. Do I think they will? I don't think so. I think Kansas State's going to be wide awake for this game. I think the talent's going to be a lot to overcome for Missouri. And I think Will Howard's going to have a nice day on the field. I think Kansas State wins this 34-7. I think it's a blowout. I think Kansas State, puts it on when it matters most. What do you think, Jackson? Is Missouri going to shock the world like they almost did last year against Georgia? Or are they getting a loss here for you as well?
I think it's going to be a closer game than expected. It's going to be a Kansas State 31-28 victory. I think Will Howard's going to have a game-winning touchdown in the final minute of the fourth quarter. And I'll be honest,
Interesting.
I know that it's not Kansas, Missouri, but it's fun seeing some old Big 12 foes and old Big 8 foes going against one another on Saturday. But I wish they didn't put this game on SEC Network. It's so disrespectful to the defending conference champs of the Big 12, Kansas State. I know it's a Missouri home game, but still, put that game on ESPN and put LSU, Mississippi State on SEC Network. Good grief.
With Jackson, they got to make their money somehow. And they're like, the Big 12, they could benefit from this. We'll put them on the SEC Network. I agree. I wish this was on like ABC or something.
True.
Just to help them out. Give Missouri more exposure, but I guess not. Now,
put Florida
a game
State Boston College on the ACC Network.
Exactly. I get it. There's always that potential of is Florida State looking ahead, but I think this game here will probably be a little bit better. But speaking of a game that should be on a network, speaking of a game that should be on a network, excuse me, and that is my boys at Louisville going up against Indiana, neutral site in Indianapolis. Now, in this game, it's on the Big Ten Network. Is Indiana potentially going to hand us our first loss on the season? I don't see. They've got a lot of talent. Like Jalen Lucas, he's dynamic. Just get him the ball in the backfield and let him go. But I feel like with Louisville, I feel like Juwan Jordan, Jamal Thrash, a lot of speed and a lot of depth is going to wear Indiana down. Their defense for Indiana is much improved from what it was, but I still think too much offense for the Hoosiers defense to handle. And with Taven Jackson and his inexperience at quarterback, I think will help us. Obviously Tom Allen, Jeff Brom have played a lot, which Jeff Brom is 4-1 the last times they've met. I think he goes 5-1 here, and we're on to 3-0, and we got Boston College coming in next week. So I got my boys at Louisville 30-17. What about you, Jackson? Are you thinking Indiana could spring us with an upset, or you picking my boys in the Ville as well?
I got to pick your boys 35-24. Although I will say it is so disrespectful that this game is on Big Ten Network. I mean, Big Ten Network's nice, don't get me wrong, but at least it should be on Fox Sports 1 at the very least.
Yeah.
I mean, put it on
Yes.
Fox Sports 1 or something. I'm not asking for this game to be on Fox or CBS or NBC. Just put it on a good one.
Now, Jackson, now we're getting to some royalty. Now, they're the king of the SEC and the king of college football. South Carolina at number 1, Georgia, the defending national champs. Now, is this a scenario? Can South Carolina do the unthinkable? Can they do what they did to Tennessee and Clemson? Is there a chance? I mean, obviously there's always a chance, but can they do the unthinkable? Because everyone was picking Clemson. Oh, Clemson's hard to beat in Death Valley. Good luck, South Carolina. Even though you're probably going to get trounced. And I'm sure they're all saying it here. Is there potential upset in Athens? Miracle on Athens Street? Oh, who am I kidding? I think Carson Beck's going to have a field day with that defense. Defense.
Oh,
Defense, and plus, South Carolina's offensive line is not very good. Newsflash: if they're your safety bank, your bank's been robbed too many times. I mean, Spencer Rattler got sacked 9 times by North Carolina. Let that sink in. North Carolina's defense sacked Spencer Rattler 9 times, and North Carolina didn't have any defense last year, barely any. And you expect South Carolina's O-line to protect against Georgia? This is going to be a nightmare if you're a Gamecocks fan. Close your eyes. Don't even watch. I think Georgia's gonna win this game, but I'll give South Carolina the benefit of the doubt and say that maybe Spencer Rattler with his legs can give the Dogs defense maybe just a little bit of fit. But I see a Georgia 30-16 victory. What about you, Jackson? Is there a miracle on Athens Street, or are the Dogs too much?
Austin, you are nicer than I am because I got Georgia winning 34-10.
Oh, goodness. I gave South Carolina the 16 points because I figured that they would get something, but you're just banking on Georgia's defense is going to basically shut them down altogether, which could very well happen. I mean, Georgia's defense is arguably the best in football, even after they lost everything. But yeah, I was a little nicer to them. You were just like, South Carolina, your offense is just not going to be there today. Nope. And which could very well happen. Now, Jackson, a game that could have a lot of offense. Minnesota at number 20, North Carolina. This could be a shootout because, obviously North Carolina's defense returned to form last week. They didn't look very good against App State. And obviously Minnesota, had a bit of a struggle bus against Nebraska, but they got it together. This is going to be one of the more interesting games of the weekend. Is North Carolina's defense, is it just one game? Do we maybe need to chillax on them? Or is their defense back to, let's just have the offense do all the work and then let's see what we can do later? But Minnesota, their defense, I mean, the run defense has always been good. Pass defense is so-so. But I'm predicting this is going to be in the high 40s. But I think we're going to see a bit of a North Carolina and Drake May game-winning drive down the field. North Carolina wins it 45-40. I think Carolina wins in a shootout. Your take, Jackson, and your winner.
Minnesota's got a pretty good defense, but their offense is a disaster. And as you stated, North Carolina's defense is the same disaster as they were last season. I do think North Carolina is going to win 38-28, and I think Minnesota is finally going to be able to score more points, although it's not going to result in a victory against NC. But I will say
Yeah.
last week's
Oh, go ahead.
matchup against Appalachian State for North Carolina, I'm still mad at that last play. I mean, that was pass interference. I mean, come on. You're telling me that wasn't pass interference against NC? Although I will say Tez Walker being turned down by the NCAA, that's just wrong. That's just wrong by the Homeowners Association of Sports.
Yeah. There's some things going on in North Carolina, but I agree. I think North Carolina, if they want to maintain their spot where they are, they definitely need to win this game. But Minnesota could, this is a game they could win, like I said, because they do have a good defense, but their offense, and we all saw it opening night against Nebraska, and the defense had to get a pick to save them. But speaking of another team that may have a good defense, Northwestern at number 21 Duke. Now Duke, I think, has been the story of the season. Well, maybe the second story of the season, because I forget there's a guy up in Colorado who may have an objection to that statement. But Northwestern and Duke, I think, Northwestern, had all that stuff with Pat Fitzgerald about the allegations, was the players doing that or did he not know? We may never know, and it's none of our business to know, I don't think. And it's one of those things. It's like, at the end of the day, you just got to put it behind you and put on the chin straps and go with it, because there's a new season ahead of us. But Duke, beating Clemson on that Monday night, I mean, that shocked me. I don't know about you, Jackson. Did you expect Duke to do what they did to Clemson? I mean, I said Duke, personally, I said Duke would go 7-5. I could see Duke going 9-3, 10-2 if they keep playing like they are. I apologize, Duke. You're better than what I thought you were. Go ahead, Jackson.
Well, I know I didn't think Duke was going to topple Clemson in their own on Labor Day. I mean, that was not going to happen. Although Riley Leonard didn't get off easy, not doing his homework before Labor Day.
Yeah, I saw that after the victory. He was telling the professor, he was like, "Please, can I have an extension? I'll get it done as soon as I get back." And he said, "Great game, great job. I'm glad you're taking Duke to new levels, but you're still in school and you still got to abide by the rules because all the offensive linemen did it." So he looks like his parents may not be too happy about that when they see the report card. But as for football play, I think Riley Leonard and company are going to have an A+ on this report card, because I think Northwestern is going to have a very down year. It's hard finding them wins. I was being generous and say they may go 4-8, but after looking at it and the way they played, their defense is not very good. Offense is just atrocious. I'm sorry, Northwestern. Duke, I think, is going to have a field day with you as well. I got Duke 49, Northwestern 13. I think Duke puts up some big points on your defense. And Riley Leonard makes himself a case to be ACC Player of the Year. What is your take, thoughts, and your pick on this game, Jackson? Does Northwestern have a chance?
I'm a little nicer than you are on this one because I said 42-17, Duke.
I mean, you're picking Duke, so yeah. Although, I mean, is there a world where maybe Jackson, is there maybe a world where Northwestern gets caught? Can catch Duke napping? Maybe. Is there a world where that can happen?
If we're talking about 2007 Duke, then yes.
Oh, goodness. But yeah, I would just like to be nice to Northwestern because I know their fans have been suffering for a while. But yeah, there's not much else to do for this game because it might get ugly. Now, a game that might be a rock throwing contest, Jackson. Virginia Tech at Northwestern. I mean,
Oh,
not
right.
Northwestern. Virginia Tech at Rutgers. Excuse me. Pardon my
Well,
language. But
Rutgers has
Ru-
usually been pretty pitiful, so
yeah, and Virginia Tech, they were once the darlings of the ACC, but now both teams have kind of hit rock bottom. Both teams are scrapping kind of at the bottom. I think this game here is going to be one of those games where it's who makes the first mistake and who makes the least mistakes. And I think in this game here, I'm going with Rutgers. I think Rutgers at home, I think are a better team at home, and I think they get a 20-13 win over Virginia Tech. I think Virginia Tech, is just a little more worse off right now than Rutgers. So I think Rutgers could get this dub at home. I think they get it done. Your takes and your pick, Jackson.
I got Rutgers winning 28-20 against Virginia Tech.
Interesting. You got a little more points than me. But speaking of teams that might be heading towards rock bottom, Jackson, and it's sad to see, but number 8 Washington at Michigan State. Now we all know, and by the way, for people who want to tune into this game just to see if Washington and Michigan State, if Washington's just going to beat them down, or maybe Michigan State has a little fight, well, you got to get the Peacock app because NBC is like, we want to put Notre Dame on instead against Central Michigan. Well, y'all can buy this on Peacock instead, which how disrespectful.
Right.
I figured they would give a little Washington a little more respect. I mean, I understand you have only so many TV spots, but Washington needs a little more respect. I mean, I get Michigan State. I get it. But come on, Washington? I mean, they have a Heisman Trophy candidate finalist of a quarterback, a team that could go to the CFP, but we digress. This game here, I mean, before the season started, I said Washington was going to win this game. I think I'm still sticking to that, but I said Washington would win this game a lot closer. Now that everything that's gone on and the fact that it's a short week in terms of game planning with their new offensive and defensive guys and their head coaching, I think Washington wins this game 31-7. I think the Huskies put it on in East Lansing. Beginning of the season, if you would have asked me, I would have said it would have been a 30-28 Huskies win. But now that everything that's gone on, I think the Huskies are going to run them over. Michigan State's is kind of in shambles right now, and they're kind of rebuilding. And hopefully they get it done quick because Michigan State, Michigan, that's a rivalry game, and I want it to continue to at least be somewhat competitive. But Jackson, on this game here, do you still think this is going to be competitive after everything that's happened with Michigan State, or is this game all Washington's for the taking?
I think it's going to be a Washington 42-24 victory over Michigan State.
I agree. I mean, agree with you, Jackson. I agree. I think Michigan State, the way they're going now, I think Washington has a lot more to play for, and it's more than likely Washington will be a candidate to win the Pac-12. So I think this game is I won't say it's 100% theirs, but I'm 95% sure they're going to take care of business. Now, one of the more interesting games of Saturday, in my opinion, number 11 Tennessee at Florida. Now, I'll be glued to the TV watching this one because this is where we're going to find out how legit is Tennessee without Hendon Hooker. Because, Jackson, you have pointed out multiple times that Tennessee, when they go to Gainesville, it becomes a nightmare for them. Their sweet dreams turn into a nightmare. Does it happen again this year? This isn't the Florida with Anthony Richards. This isn't the Florida with Tim Tebow or Felipe Franks or Kyle Trask, the quarterbacks of the past. But Graham Mertz, if he cannot turn the ball over, they can get established a run game. Florida's defense is fine. They're good. I mean, they kept Utah's offense in check. Hint, it was without Cam Rising, so you can put that asterisk on it if you want. But it did hold them in check. I think in this game, this is going to be a slug it out, hard knocks game. I think Tennessee, this is going to be the worst their offense I think is going to look all year. I think they win this. I think Tennessee wins this game. But people are going to come out of this and saying, wow, Tennessee's offense did not look that good. I have a Tennessee 17 to Florida 14 victory. Wow. I got a good old-fashioned 90s slugfest game. Jackson, take it away. Who's your pick? And give me a couple thoughts on this game, if you would.
Well, Tennessee's going to win 38-28 on this one. I mean, it's going to be a little higher scoring, but I do believe Tennessee gets the job done. They've always had this problem in Gainesville. The last time they won in Gainesville was 2003. And as a matter of fact, the last time they were beating Florida in back-to-back years was in 2003 and 2004. So we can see some good things happening here on Saturday for the Volunteers on ESPN.
Yeah, this is going to be a big turning point in Tennessee's season because they beat Florida. Then the next milestone will be, can they beat Bama 2 years in a row, which comes in week 8, and we will talk about that game, I'm sure, when we get there. Now, for another SEC team that might be on a roll, Jackson. How about Georgia Tech at 17 Ole Miss? The Ole Miss running Rebels of Lane Kiffin and Zaire Franklin and Chugs, as they like to call him. This game here, I think it's going to be a shootout. I know people want to say that Ole Miss's defense is fixed with Pete Golden from Bama, and which last week against Jackson's secondary team, his boys at Tulane, they kind of held them in check. But we got to remember it was Tulane. Georgia Tech, I think, might, you could say, have a better, more competent offense. But I think in this game, obviously, I don't expect a lot of defense. I expect, Haynes King, Georgia Tech, they're going to be running the ball. They're going to be throwing a lot of screens. I don't expect defense, but I do expect Ole Miss to win this game because Ole Miss, this is a game you have to win if you want to be a New Year's 6 team. I'm not saying this is a game you have to win if you want to win the SEC, but if you want to be a New Year's 6 team, this is a game you absolutely need to win. And I think Ole Miss gets it done behind their great running back duo and by the offensive brilliance of Lane Kiffin. I have an Ole Miss 45, Georgia Tech 36 win. I think Ole Miss gets it done at home. Jackson, your pick and your take.
I'm going to go with Ole Miss 38, Georgia Tech 17. Although I will say, I wonder if Georgia Tech was to somehow upset Ole Miss, they can be let back in the SEC.
Oh, I don't know. I'm not the commissioner. I can't make those
I know.
decisions for you. But you want to
I'm
talk
just
about a good rivalry that doesn't get talked a lot about, Jackson. And BYU at Arkansas. I think this is a rivalry that a lot of the younger generation hasn't got to really experience as much. Well, this is going to be your first taste Saturday. Well, me and you, we've got to see plenty of this because we're a little older. But for any of our younger generation out there that are getting into college football and love this is a game. If you watch it, you'll fall in love with it because it's a game that always kind of quietly delivers. KJ Jefferson, that high flying Arkansas offense up against BYU. Who is entering the Big 12 this year. A lot of expectations are on them. Are they going to be the worst team in there, or is it possibly going to be someone else? I think this game here, I think we're going to see a bit of offense defense kind of game. I think first half defenses are kind of going to be feeling each other out. KJ Jefferson, I think towards the second half, is going to use his legs more to create plays. And I think Arkansas gets a win. And I think they do it in dominant fashion. I think Arkansas wins 38-20. I think the Hogs get it. Get it done. Woo, pick sweet. But, Jackson, are the Hogs going to get it done in your prediction, or is BYU going to upset?
I'll be honest. I think this is going to be closer than the experts have it because Rocket Sanders is out for this game due to a knee injury they suffered in week 1. But they still got KJ Jefferson, as you put it. So I think it's going to be 24-20 Arkansas.
It should be very interesting. I think this game, if BYU is playing good football, they could very well win. But also a big factor is they're not at home, they're on the road. That kind of makes a big difference. And I think Arkansas at home is just really hard to beat. But Jackson, you know what time of night it's going to be. What we have this year on NBC. Here comes Saturday night. Syracuse is going to visit them Purdue Boilermakers. Is Purdue going to spoil Syracuse season? Well, last year, everybody saw it. They were in the Carrier Dome. Syracuse maybe got away with a few calls at the end. Was that roughing the passer? Was it not? I try to not pick sides, but it looked awful like it was. But nonetheless, they've got a chance to right that wrong this year. Is Dino Babers, is he on the hot seat? I mean, after his 6-0 start he had last year, and then losing their last 6 after Clemson, very well can make a case that they are. I know, Jackson, I know you have something that you would like to add on to that. Is Dino Babers on the hot seat?
Yes.
Interesting. Why do you think he's on the hot seat? Is it because of the way he ended, or is it just because he just doesn't show maybe what Syracuse is looking for?
Well, it's because after they play Clemson, they always fall apart. It's like they forget who else is on the schedule, including last year. They were falling apart after they played Clemson.
Yeah, I agree with you. And on this game, Purdue, Ryan Waters, and Purdue, Brom's no longer there. He came back over to us here at Louisville. So Purdue has a whole new offense going. Hudson Card, the former Texas transfer quarterback, has looked pretty good in his few games that he's played at Purdue. I think this game right here it's going to come down to who gets the ball kind of last. So I feel like both these teams are very evenly matched. I think this time Purdue wins, but they win it in chaotic fashion. I think Purdue wins it 26-23 in overtime.
Austin, my good buddy, with all due respect, I say not so fast, my friend. I'm going with Syracuse on the road, 31-27.
I knew that was coming sooner or later. But why you think Syracuse is going to do it 2 years in a row? I mean, it's hard to beat a team twice.
But it can be done.
It can be. I mean, I absolutely agree. It can be done. I mean, ask Alabama. They've done it a couple times. But I just think Purdue, like with Penn State, Illinois, they've had this game circled. I think, and the way that both these teams are lining up, Purdue, after that loss to Fresno State, they kind of need this one if they maybe want to make bowl eligibility. Syracuse, you could think that, could they possibly win some games in the ACC? What do you think, Jackson? You think, looking at their ACC slate, do you think they can win some of those and maybe potentially make a bowl? Unlike
Oh,
Purdue, who
yeah.
has maybe more of a treacherous road to get to 6.
Oh, they can make a ball game. That's the thing. They just have to get to at least 8 or 9 wins. That will keep Dino off the hot seat.
Now, looking at Purdue's schedule, do you think if they don't win this game that they're not going bowling? Because obviously they've got Michigan on the schedule. That's never an easy game. And they got Indiana. Indiana, people always make fun of them. Ha ha, here comes Indiana. But Indiana's not an easy game. It never is. Do you think Purdue needs this more than Syracuse, or do you think Syracuse needs it more?
I think it's a case for both. They both really need it.
I mean, if you had to pick one, which one would you pick? Like, who needed it more? Purdue? That's fair. Now,
Well, and
speaking of,
plus, it's
go
tough
ahead.
finding other wins for Purdue on this Big Ten schedule. I mean, Northwestern's an easy one, but that's it.
Yes, I agree. Now, Jackson, speaking of must-have wins,
Ooh.
ABC Saturday night, Pittsburgh at West Virginia, the backyard brawl. Now, Neil Brown, is his seat hot? Is his butt on fire, so to speak?
Ooh.
Arguably, because if he doesn't win this game, could he be history? But you look at it from Pittsburgh's side, were they playing a little look ahead last week against Cincinnati? I mean, I know, Jackson, you've been a big component of saying Cincinnati under Scott Satterfield is going to be a disaster. Well, maybe they're better than you thought. I don't know. But in this game here, Jackson, talking to you and getting to know you, you love this game and you want to, enlighten the people on some of the best games of this series and what about it is just so magnificent. Before we get into our picks, highlight it.
Man. Oh man, this game was the premier matchup for the Big East. Like, I remember I talked with Dale Wolfley, host of the Wolfman's Call in July. Let me tell you, we talked about some great memories of this rivalry. From Jeff Hostetler throwing a game-winning touchdown in the early 80s to seeing Pittsburgh pull off the upset in 07 to West Virginia spoiling slim to none national championship hopes for Pittsburgh, and the last Big East matchup in 2011, and of course, the game-winning pick six by Pittsburgh last season. I mean, holy cow. This rivalry, man, I mean, maybe I'm not from Pennsylvania or West Virginia, so nobody's going to think I have a lot of appreciation for this rivalry, but here's the thing about me. I got an appreciation for college football rivalries, man. And I'm happy that this game
Hmm.
is going to be continue to play through 2025, and then they're going to go back to playing 2029 through 2032. But I wish this game was played more every year. If I had it my way, Pittsburgh would be playing West Virginia every year, and they'd be playing Penn State every year. Why? Well,
Yeah.
state pride for Pittsburgh, Penn State, and to make sure that everybody in college football is happy. Nobody's left out.
Hmm. But as for this game, I'm gonna go Pittsburgh. I think they're gonna go up to West Virginia and get this win. I think it's gonna be close. I think Pittsburgh, Pat Narduzzi is gonna have this team ready, especially that defense after what they did last week, losing to Cincinnati by seemingly, they lost by 6, but it seemed like they should have lost the game by more. I'm going Pittsburgh 27, West Virginia 19. I think Pittsburgh wins this game. Jackson, who are you picking?
Austin, I gotta say, for a second time in a row, not so fast, my friend. I'm going West Virginia at home, 28-24. Garrett Green's gonna pull off a game winner.
Boy, Jackson, I just can't get the right end of the stick on this. I mean, you're just Lee Corso me left and right today. But let's see if I get Lee Corso in this next game. Not Tennessee. Where's my head at? TCU at Houston. Now, this is very interesting.
Oh yeah.
Obviously, Houston lost to University of Food. How do you lose to University of Food, Jackson? I'm sorry to all my Cougs fans out there, and especially to one who paid a special visit to the Jacksonian Parker's Ainsworth. I'm sorry. How do y'all lose to Food? I mean, I get it. Rice has all the smarts and stuff, but goodness gracious, when it comes to the Bronze, you should have beat them. But I digress, Jackson. I digress. Now, let's talk about TCU. Enough about Houston. They're old news. Let's talk about some TCU now. So, TCU, they lost a lot of talent. Quentin Johnson, Max Duggan, a couple guys on the D line are now gone. All NFL guys. Replace it all. National runner-ups. Is TCU, how good are they actually going to be? Well, they were 17th to start the season, and then primetime came in and shocked the world. Don't mean to toot my own horn, but I called it from the beginning, but everyone laughed at me. But it's all good because I'm basking in the primetime glory. But we'll get to them in just a second. But for this game here, I think this is going to be a struggle of a game because I think both these teams are on the reload. I think both these teams have got a lot to play for, kind of like Syracuse, Purdue. Some down years coming. Not as much talent as they've had. But I'm going Houston because they are at home and they want to get that embarrassing loss to Rice off their bad taste out of their mouth. I think Houston wins it 31-28, and they kick a game-winning field goal, and everyone forgets the loss to Rice. Jackson, your pick and your take.
Well, I will say these two schools have a lot of history with one another. I mean, TCU went unbeaten against them in the Conference USA era, but the last time Houston beat them was ironically in Houston in 1992, but that was in the Southwest Conference days. I want to say Houston, but for the third time in a row, I just got to say it. Not so fast, my friend. I'm going TCU 38-27.
Well,
You pick
I
you
mean, maybe
pick
we can agree on this game, Jackson. Maybe we can agree on this game. How about Colorado State at number 18, Colorado? My boys in prime time. Literally in prime time.
Prime
10
time.
p.m. 10 p.m. Eastern, Pac-12 dark, or 9 p.m. Central Jackson's time, or if you're on the West Coast, 7 p.m. Pacific, which then it's not after dark, it's still early evening. How lucky. But in this game here, there's a lot of, there's a team that actually does have a lot of hype, being the Colorado Buffs. A team that was 1-11 last year, was not very good, and that's putting it politely. But we cannot understate the turnaround that Deion Sanders has done to Colorado. I mean, there's been a lot of great coaching turnarounds in both the NFL and college. I think Deion Sanders has the argument that he made the greatest turnaround in college football history. After what Buffalo was, after what the Buffs were last year compared to now, and everyone's saying, oh, you're kicking these players off. How dare you? And you're bringing your son, Travis Hunter, in and all these guys. You don't know what you're doing, Deion. You're in over your head. Colorado will be lucky to win 2 games. Well, unless something goes terribly wrong Saturday, they're more than likely going to start off 3-0, halfway to bowl eligibility, and then they got a big date with the Ducks in Autzen. Now that'll be the test. If they beat Oregon and then somehow go and beat USC, you might as well, crown them the princes of college football. We could be talking Pac-12 title contenders. Shoot, I'm already starting to talk about it. But I think it's no shock here. Can Colorado State maybe pull off an upset? Is Colorado looking ahead? I don't think Primetime's going to let it happen. Everyone thought after the TCU game, this is where the fairy tale ends. They're going to get too excited. And what happened? They kicked some butt. I think they continue to kick butt and keep it going. I think Colorado wins this game 38-14. I think offense, defense plays great on both sides, and then prime time gets win number 3. Your take and your thoughts, Jackson.
Well, I will say, though, everybody is heading to this game. You got Big Noon Kickoff, College Game Day heading over, the Pat McAfee Show, 60 Minutes. Everyone is loving prime time and the Colorado Buffaloes. So I will say they're going to be mighty impressed, and they're going to be really happy to see a 56-17 victory by Colorado. Kind of like how Chris Berman said no one circles the wagons like the Buffalo Bills. Well, here's another Jacksonism that you can write down. No one circles the wagons like the Colorado Buffaloes.
Yeah. And, as Primetime said, he's got plenty of room on his wagon, and that wagon's getting pretty full pretty quick. Now, on to our final game of the night of the Saturday night slate. This is, I think, going to be one of the more underrated games that no one's really talking about. Fresno State, Arizona State. I think this has the potential to be one of those games where one of the best games no one watches. Because Fresno State, they had a fantastic year last year, especially with Jake Hayner. And, and for them to go into Purdue and get a week 1 win, a lot of people were saying that was an upset. Well, I kind of look at it as Fresno State. They're a really good team, and I think people need to give them a little more credit than what they've gotten. Arizona State, with, all their allegations, and Kenny Dillingham, they hired away from Oregon, who was the OC there last year. Is Arizona State, are they as bad as people think? I think in this game here, I'm picking Fresno State. I think there's too much for talent. I think Arizona State, I get it's in the desert, but we saw they went up to Purdue. They got it done, and I think they get it here. I think their offense is clicking, and I think Fresno State gets a 41 33 victory. I got the Bulldogs pulling it off over the Sun Devils. Your
There you
take
go.
and thoughts, Jackson.
That's a good pick, my friend, because you were picking the team with the second longest active winning streak in all of college football. Fresno State's going to extend it to 12 as they win 35-27. Oh
I
yeah.
I think this week is going to be fun. I'm looking forward to it. There's a lot of great games. Tennessee, Florida, Washington, Michigan State, Minnesota, North Carolina, Louisville, Indiana, Penn State, Illinois, all these great games. Army, UTSA, all these great games. Week 3, can't wait. What it brings. But obviously, there's going to be plenty of things to talk about in between now. But before we get out of here, want to mention a couple things. Hope you guys enjoyed tonight. Going to try to make this a regular thing with everybody by having guest appearances each week, besides listening to me talk. Jackson, thank you for joining me tonight. Hopefully you will be back for Pick'em soon. We'll have more people on, but make sure you like, comment, subscribe. And Jackson, what are you looking forward to on this Saturday and Thursday and Friday games? And let the people know where they can find you if they want to check out some awesome content that you're doing over at the Jacksonian.
Well, I'm definitely looking forward to seeing some old foes reuniting with Kansas State, Missouri. But I'm really looking forward to the Pittsburgh, West Virginia matchup on Saturday Night Football. I'll tell you this, though. I heard that Greg McElroy's calling that game, and he and Sean McDonough are going to have a great time. They are going to have a great time in Morgantown. And as for TCU Houston, even though I'm sad that Houston lost to the University of Food, they're going to have their first conference game in the Big 12 era at home versus the defending national runner-ups. That's going to be fun. But in the meantime, you can find me on Twitter, Instagram, and on YouTube. And you can find my latest episode from Monday night where I talked with the Nebraska postgame host, Justin Adams, about all stuff Nebraska football related stuff, and we also talked about some other things that were really deep. We had some talks about how boxing helps mental health, and there's plenty of other stuff. What's the other interesting stuff? Tune in to find out. It is awesome.
Yes,
but also
please make sure you.
But also check out Sports Talk with Austin.
I appreciate that, Jackson. Ladies and gentlemen, please make sure you like, comment, subscribe over at Jackson's channel. Leave him a great review. Leave him a comment. Make sure the word gets out. And as for me, do the same over here. And do the same for our good friends Will and Dee and Jeffrey from Only Talk Sports. Let's spread the word about everybody here. This is a great community. And, let's help Mark Rogers of the Voice of College Football while we're at it. Let's help the Voice of College Football grow. Because the more views and subscribers goes up for him, the better it comes for us. Because we're all one big happy community. And we're just happy to be here. And we got plenty of games coming up this weekend. But until then, remember, drink your milk, take your vitamins, and remember, Texas is not back until they win the Big 12. But until then, ladies and gentlemen, this has been Sports Talk with Austin with Jackson Johnson of the Jacksonian. This was Week 3 preview. Look forward to bringing you Week 4 next week. And what is to come, who knows? But until then, we are out this thing. Peace.